There's been a trend in recent times of making the reader ask questions. And of course, this is a classic element of storytelling in the past couple decades, but you might be surprised to find out that involving the reader to question your story seems to be fairly modern. The mystery novel, originating in the mid-1800s, was the first to really make the reader's questions part of the reading experience. I think just about everyone who picks up a mystery book understands the appeal. From Sherlock Holmes to Encyclopedia Brown, only the real ones know about that one, mystery gets you even more involved in these stories because it's you asking the questions. Modern storytelling has been taking elements of that mystery genre into more mainstream stories over the past 25 years. You've heard me talk about how Brandon Sanderson has involved this in a more approachable way with his philosophy of RAFO, read and find out, taken from Robert Jordan and The Wheel of Time. And this philosophy is spreading across more and more genres than ever before. In Lost and Severance, two incredible shows that lean into this element of storytelling, they approach the mystery in a different way. The driving force behind their mystery isn't that there's a body and we need to find the killer, not like what you would see in traditional fiction or in mystery. Instead, both of these shows use surrealism to make you question the world. Now, your experience with surrealism might start with surrealist art, like The Son of Man or Dali's The Persistence of Memory. It might have been M.C. Escher and his optical illusions. Or if you're of a more modern generation, you might have been exposed to surrealism through liminal spaces like The Backrooms. What is surrealism? In regards to art, you might come across a definition like this. But for this video, I'm going to settle on a more basic, actionable definition. Surrealism twists the rules of our world in ways that are both familiar and unfamiliar. When we look at the Son of Man, we know everything in this image. It's all familiar, but we also know that this isn't possible. How is this apple being held up? Why can't we see this person's face? And it can leave you feeling unsettled. Something about the rules of this world in this painting is just a bit different. The Backrooms are a famous piece of internet lore that evolved into a video series. And when you look at this, you see a world that is both familiar and unfamiliar. You've seen hallways and walls and even office buildings where a setting like this could exist. But of course, this can't exist. The hallways are never ending. The architecture doesn't make sense. This can't exist. And it raises questions about this world that can leave you unsettled. Taking what you know as familiar and twisting it into an unfamiliar thing is one of the many ways that we as storytellers can create interesting and involved stories. Famously, in the pilot episode of Lost, the episode concludes with a moment that left some fans hungry for more and other fans rolling their eyes.
Guys, this isn't just a bear. It's a polar bear.
This is one of the moments early on in the show where J.J. Abrams and Damon Lindelof chose something specifically strange to show on the island in order to tell the audience that things were different here. That the rules that you know in the real world don't apply here in the same way. Now, of course, this gets explored a dozen more times on the show, but this was really the first moment. Before we get too far, you might be wondering, with my definition of surrealism, how is surrealism different than just something like science fiction, which might take a familiar world like ours and add a technology or an alien species and tell a story from that? The difference is that surrealism uses that familiarity and unfamiliarity as a way to unsettle the reader. That's the end goal. And what I mean by that is that the reader is involved in trying to understand this imbalanced world. While science fiction is doing something similar, it uses this familiar world to show a different effect, usually what this world could be. Imagine iRobot.
Good morning, sir. Yet another on-time delivery from...
Get the hell out of my face, Scanner.
Or Ready Player One or Cyberpunk 2077. The purpose of the world and its rules is not to unsettle you, but to get you excited at what this world could be. What our world could be if it goes through some changes. Lost uses this surrealism to create moments where you question the reality of the show. What are the rules here? Because they're different than our own. One simple example of this is the dead coming back to life. Doesn't sound like surrealism, right? And yet the way that it's done very much is. Remember this image because it becomes a common hallmark of shows that embrace the surreal. A common tactic of surrealism in shows is to change the context around a normal thing. This image from Lost takes a very plain thing in our world, a man dressed in a suit, and places him in a different context. And the change in context creates that unsettled nature of surrealism. The juxtaposition is unavoidable. Another show that leans into this surrealism even more is Twin Peaks, which is arguably the most popular show to embrace and use surrealism in its story, at least in a major way. In Twin Peaks, director David Lynch uses surrealism to mimic the feeling of the dream state. That state where you know that things aren't quite right, but you accept them as normal. Strange images, universal laws breaking and reforming, being surrounded by the abnormal. It happens and you just accept it. And it leads to an audience being put in an uncomfortable state of trying to make sense of this world. What is real and what is not? The newest breakout hit that uses surrealism in its story is Severance. For those who haven't yet been exposed to the show, the story revolves around Lumen and its technology called Severance. Workers who opt into Severance receive brain surgery and have a device planted right up there that creates two sets of memories and personalities. You stay the same, except when you go to work, your other personality takes over. You essentially have two different lives. Also, just look at this intro. It uses surrealism in a great, mesmerizing way. In the offices below Lumen, the show takes cues from the back rooms and embraces that surreal aesthetic. Stark white hallways, neon green carpet, and a maze of corridors that often defy the laws of our world. We go into the show expecting a show grounded in our reality, but of course with a science fiction twist. Instead, there are moments that are purposefully presented to defy those expectations. Remember this? I told you it was common. Severance relies on these surrealist elements to unsettle the viewer and create these moments of tension. Time and time again, the viewer is left wondering if what they just saw was reality or not. What if this show is truly taking place, and what of this show is not as it seems? That experience as a viewer makes you question the rules of the world. And as we uncover these rules, the context of the show changes. Severance uses surrealism to change the stakes of the show. It has layers, like an ogre.
You get it! We both have layers.
As we are introduced to these surrealist ideas, everything else within this show shifts to adapt to this new view of the world. And specifically in this show, it's contrasted with the very real world outside of the Lumen offices. And this world is very grounded, very real. We know what to expect here. The fact that both of these settings exist within the show creates an even starker divide between the world we know and the one we're just discovering. Surrealism in stories isn't just about the setting. In Severance, it's core to the plot. Unfortunately, I can't share all of my wonderful examples with you without spoiling the show, and this is a show worth savoring. Lost and Severance are two of my favorite shows of all time. And then Psych, but that's not important right now. Well, you know what, maybe it'll be important in a few weeks. I don't know. Surrealism is like a secret sauce that you can use in your stories when appropriate that requires the reader to get involved, to acknowledge that the world within this story isn't quite the same as what we live in. And surrealism allows you to create a story unlike anything else because you are bending the laws of our world, and that's awesome. If you like breaking down stories like this, consider subscribing and joining our Discord linked below. We have nearly 500 writers sharing writing and advice and resources and tips, and it's just a great place to be. And we even do writing challenges every couple of months. I'll see you next time, and as always, thank you for watching.